Finovate showcases cutting-edge banking and financial technology through a global conference series featuring short-form demos and thought leadership. Now, the conversation continues on the Finovate podcast.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Finovate podcast. Joining me today, we have Howard Xiao, Head of Partnerships at VGS. Howard, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Greg.
So as we like to do on this episode, or on this podcast, I should say, I'd like to have you start by giving just a quick overview of yourself, your background, and of course, what VGS is all about.
Yeah, of course. So just to kick off, for those that don't know, VGS is a payments tokenization platform. We are a leader in the space and reach significant scale. We have over 3.5 billion tokens on file and customers on every continent, supporting many payments use cases across the ecosystem, from fintech and BaaS to merchant acceptance, et cetera. So, and then for my role here, I lead strategic partnerships at VGS, and we support both payment partners. My team supports card networks, payments processors, et cetera, and all of our relationships across the board there. And then also channel and alliances. So think like cloud providers like AWS and a lot of the fraud providers and other adjacent verticals to payments in the ecosystem. And just to give a little bit more background as well. I spent about a decade in payments and spent a lot of years at Visa as well, managing a lot of the big strategic partners there, and really saw the tremendous growth in digital payments through those digital partners at Visa.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And your experience, I'm sure, it makes you incredibly valuable to the folks at VGS. From our standpoint at Finovate, we've seen a little bit of VGS's evolution over the years, obviously starting out as very good security. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about the journey from focusing more specifically on security into supporting the payments ecosystem as you do now?
Yeah, definitely. In the beginning, right, VGS's name was very good security. And it really lends itself to what we were mostly focused on: compliance and security-based tokenization. And then as time went on, we sort of fell into a lot of these payment use cases. So a lot of folks started first storing all of the PCI data and making sure that they were de-scoped from PCI compliance. And then as time went on and they wanted to integrate with other payments processors out in the market, or work with issuer processors, for instance, being able to centrally store that information and transmit that information to all the other providers that they were working with in the ecosystem became really important. And that also expanded into all of these payments use cases that we see pretty prevalent today, both in merchant acceptance as well as fintech and issuance.
Yeah, one of the things I like about this is it's really more of just kind of an expansion of what the word security is, more so than a move away from it. It's really kind of taking this security and putting it into a different bucket. And just like in many cases, a lot of fintech tends to come back to payments. Similarly, a lot of fintech tends to come back to security at some point. It's something that is obviously very necessary for anybody who's dealing with this kind of data and needs to keep these processes in place so that they can make sure that they're taking care of the business that they need to and keeping everything secure. How would you say that VGS's own evolution compares to what's going on in the industry at a larger scale?
Yeah, I think the industry has become more and more sophisticated in payments, right? More fintechs are starting to look like, starting to do more merchant acceptance type use cases and embedding finance and those types of capabilities and embedding payments. And vice versa, a lot of merchants are starting to become issuers in some senses. And because of that same shift, having a flexible platform like VGS really helped them as they were scaling into the future, right? And so that's really for us adding on all these other capabilities for, just to give an example, with merchant acceptance. We had originally started out with PCI tokenization, and then we added on all these other merchant acceptance capabilities like network tokens, account updater, capabilities that we took from the card networks and other providers in the ecosystem. And then, then there's just, more and more shifts in the industry for fintechs who are also starting to get more complex. They, want more fine-grained control of their customer experience, and so they also want to store and support their customer onboarding experience in a unique way. So storing on the back end the customer information, the PII information in a customized way with centralized control through a unified vault helps them to provide the best experience they can for their customers.
Yeah, I think you're hitting on a couple of themes that we're certainly have talked about a lot on the podcast. What would you say is driving this shift? You think it's coming from kind of the technology side, the consumer side? What do you think is really the force behind these changes that we're seeing?
Yeah, for merchants, I think it's driven, as always, by operational efficiencies, cost optimization, and I think that's true for fintechs as well. But it seems to be a very big point on the merchant acceptance side. On the fintech side, I really think it's about customer experience, like I was mentioning earlier, and just feeling like the fintechs want further control than maybe their traditional providers were providing them previously, right? So they, in many ways, we are starting to see sort of this unbundling of what we would call program management in the past, and a lot of fintechs in different verticals deciding, hey, I want my customer onboarding experience to be very unique and very customized to my vertical, and therefore I want to manage my customer experience myself and my program management myself and bring that in-house. And using a universal vault like VGS helps them do that because they can pull in PII information and PCI information while still making sure that they are removed from the liability of storing that sensitive data themselves.
Yeah, that liability is a crucial piece because I think in a lot of cases, fintechs either really want to have that kind of data, that they want to be able to use it, or they really don't. They don't want to take that liability. They prefer to just kind of outsource that, move it to somebody else, and not absorb any potential risk there.
Yeah, definitely. I think liability is always the starting point, and then to your point earlier, it expands from there. After you've been able to remove the liability from the sensitive data, now what can you do with that data to optimize everything that you're doing for your operations, right? So whether that's KYC, KYB, or leveraging other best of breed fraud providers in the ecosystem, how can you take advantage of all the great experience from all the other partners in the ecosystem in order to make your platform the best that it could be?
Yeah, yeah. I want to switch gears a little bit and come back to this word that you used a little bit ago, flexibility. One of the things we've talked a lot about on this show is the importance of staying flexible, making sure that you're responding to customer needs as they shift. What advice do you have for any fintechs who are listening to this and looking to emulate the flexibility that you all have shown at VGS?
Yeah, I think there's no silver bullet answer to this. I do think it's pretty commonly heard advice, which is just making sure that we listen to the feedback of our customers, and that's really, really important. And making sure we take in that customer feedback and bring that into our product roadmap, bring that into our engineers' plans and sprints, etc. But also importantly, I think a second part to this is recognizing when the kind of bounds of your platform don't make sense for a particular customer, and then saying, actually, another provider working in concert with VGS is the right way of approaching this problem. And being able to, and selfishly as a partnerships person, saying that you can work alongside this partner with VGS and you can create something that you're looking for, right? And solve for the use case that you're looking for.
Yeah, and I think you're highlighting something here, which is really easy to talk about, much more difficult to do. And that is listening to your customers, really taking this feedback and thinking about it in two ways. To your point there, looking at areas where maybe when a customer is telling you something that there's actually, it means that you aren't in a position to give them exactly what they need. You might need to look elsewhere to help them get that support. You can still maintain a relationship with somebody, even if you're not able to provide them exactly the services that they need in that moment. And in many cases, this can actually elevate their trust in you, which is, I think, a really important piece. The other side of it is, though, is listening to customers and really looking for those areas where they're offering you opportunities. They're giving you an insight into where you should potentially go in the future. And so this is not an easy thing to do. And it can, in many cases, be very uncomfortable to have these kind of conversations with customers, to take this kind of feedback. But it is so, so valuable when it comes to figuring out where you want to build, or what you want to build towards, I should say, how you want to adjust your technology. And at the end of the day, it really helps to strengthen this relationship that you have with your customers. When you're able to have this kind of two-way communication, you can come out of it in a really good spot. So I just wanted to highlight that for anybody listening to this, because that's such a crucial piece. I want to make sure that everybody takes it away. I'd like to zoom out now and kind of look again at the broader industry. What do you expect to be the big shifts that are going to affect the industry over the next few years? And you can take this any direction you'd like. You can talk about, consumer behavior, merchant behavior, from the technology side. What are you really looking at and thinking of, this is going to have a big impact on the space?
Yeah, I think it's a trend that seemingly keeps on happening as I've looked around the industry, not only specifically for payments, but also for commerce at large, right? So we saw sort of originally this bundling effect where as the internet first came around and e-commerce started booming, Amazon and all these marketplaces really bundled all of the solutions together. And then as time went on, more and more providers in the ecosystem provided more unbundled or democratized tools for different merchants to set up shop online and be able to do all these things. Everyone from like a Squarespace to even physical point of sale to like Square, to Shopify, to WooCommerce. All of these folks are basically showing this trend of unbundling. Now, I think there's going to be another rebundling effect that will happen in the industry, and that will probably start centering around different verticals. I think let's give an example like gaming or video gaming online, that there could be processors or payment facilitators focused specifically on that area. There already are, but those verticals will grow as time goes on. I think there's many other industries out there that will also see the same shift. And it'll become more and more important to work with kind of industry experts and vertical experts. And also from VGS's standpoint, us being a flexible enough platform that we can adapt to all the different verticals that our customers are in and are expanding into.
Yeah, I think in many ways, this really dovetails nicely with one of the other big themes that we're seeing across fintech, which is, of course, personalization, and the idea that each individual wants to be treated as an individual. And we now have the capability from a technological standpoint to be able to do that. We have the data to be able to understand people in a way that we never have before. But with that comes this rising expectation of individuals expecting to be treated as individuals. And I can see that absolutely reflected in what you're talking about here. I can only hope that the rebundling that you're talking about also happens in the entertainment industry. I'm pretty sick of having to subscribe to a million different streaming services. I miss the days where it was just cable. Can we get back to one thing instead of having me do? So maybe we'll see that in other industries as well. But certainly, I think it makes sense from a payment standpoint. I'd like to close with just a relatively straightforward question that will probably be slightly complex to answer. But what is VGS doing now to make sure that you're able to continue to provide value as your customers, to your customers, as the industry continues to shift along the lines of what you were just suggesting?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, VGS being as flexible of a platform as it is, I think that by nature will keep on ensuring that we support our customers in whatever verticals they enter into as time goes on. But then secondly, I think, and importantly for me as a partnerships person, I think what we're doing by partnering with all the providers in the industry and really focusing on that is of utmost importance, because there's going to be providers who are experts in their particular fields, and recognizing that and recognizing the importance of partnering is really how VGS will also support our customers the best and differentiate ourselves.
No, I like that. And I like the kind of viewpoint you take towards the industry as a whole of looking for people who can provide the partnerships that you need, looking for customers who are able to kind of use you in a variety of different and creative ways. I think the future looks bright for VGS. I think it looks bright from the payment space more broadly. Certainly, there is a lot of work to be done in order to make sure that we're doing things in a safe and secure way while still taking advantage of some of these amazing opportunities. But that, I'm afraid, is the time we have for today. So, Howard, I want to thank you again for joining us. I certainly hope all of our listeners were able to pull some interesting insights away. And I hope everybody's interested in learning a little bit more about VGS as well. Thanks again.
Thanks, Greg.
The Finovate podcast is produced by Informa Connect in association with Provoke.fm Media. Check out Finovate.com for information on Finovate's upcoming shows and to learn how you can get involved. The discount code Finovate Podcast will save you 20% on tickets to all of our events. And you can email us at info@finovate.com for information on sponsoring, speaking, or demoing. Thanks for listening.